Welcome to today's quickfire rounds of the state of Specs in the Midnight Beta, which just so recently launched. Since now it's playable by way more players than just a few days ago, everyone also get the chance to test these changes coming in midnight for their own specs or the specs they might be interested in. So we are starting for today's video with one of the more ravaged specs in midnight. One of the more devastated ones, which is a Shadow Priest. Now what you see in the bars is pretty much what is left of your damaging abilities and damaging buttons, minus this one, which isn't exactly a damaging button, but everything else in here is everything you have right now for you to be doing damage. The only exception in this case for Shadow are a couple of things. Number one, we are not taking Shadow Fiend or Mindbender for reasons, and then you have some missing talents still in the 3, but these won't be actual damaging buttons. So this is pretty much all you have available right now, and we have to start with Shadow because it is in one of the more dire situations compared to other specs, hit by the pruning quite heavily. However, before we start dooming and pointing out the badness of Shadow, we have to point out the two positive things. Okay, let's be optimistic at least on a couple of things. Number one, the fact that you're losing the slow, clumsy, bugging against the ceiling Shadow Crash, and now you are gaining Tentacle Slam. The reason why Tentacle Slam is better is because you simply click your button on the target and it's practically near instant. Doesn't have to travel, you won't have the tank trolling you as he moves away the mobs and your Shadow Crash misses completely. You won't miss hit like a ceiling, a wall, or anything of the sort. You just straight up hit the mob with it almost instantly. So that's much better for your way to spread your dots for Imity Plus, right? That's the main positive that's coming in midnight. The second positive is your Apex talents. Now, while they are very passive and they don't actually do anything really for your rotation or anything of the sort, when an effect from an idol is activated, you conjure shadowy apparitions. This is good because all of your capstone talents are idol effects, you know, stacks racking up and then doing something once they reaches max stacks, or just a chance to spawn a void tendril. At the moment, we can't really talk about this one. You could run quadruple idol, but this one is still terrible, so at the moment you're not. The second talent is that when you spawn the apparition, you have a 15% chance to create a roided up one, a beefed up one, a void apparition, which uses void bolt for extra damage, which is good because you have more idols spawns more shadowy apparitions have more chances of getting the empowered version. And then lastly, Tentacle Slam now has a guaranteed chance to guarantee the trigger of one of these effects. No matter if they had no stacks or if they just procced or anything, it just forces one of the idols to proc. So it is quite good. It does synergize you with one of the talent setups you can go for pretty much, which is just spawning more apparitions. Try to get as many apparitions as possible. For example, you would have to go for something like Tormented Spirits now to get the chance to spawn apparitions also with your Shadow War Pain, because then the more they spawn, the more all of this gets empowered. So in terms of positives, you have the Tentacle Slam, okay, much better than Shadow Crash, and you have your Apex talents, which actually do work quite well with your current talent setups and synergize around your shadowy apparitions. This is all good. This is, however, where the goodness ends for Shadow. So let's talk about the negatives. Negative number one, you now have limited Halo only for Archon, no longer available to Void Weaver, just like Divine Star, they're both gone, as well as Void Torrent, which is now cooked into the Void Weaver 3, the hero talent, so it's no longer available for Archon. The second negative, talking about cooldowns, since Halo and Void Torrent pretty much both were working as cooldowns, you are losing Dark Ascension, so your alternative talent to your Void Eruption, the 1 minute direct damage buff, is gone. Now you only have Void Eruption as a cooldown, and the minor, this is more like thematic thing, it's gonna hurt, right, thematically, to lose Shadow War Pain. You weren't actually technically clicking it yourself, it was always cooked up together with Vampiric Touch because of Misery, but it still feels kinda sad to lose Shadow War Pain. What you actually do lose that is very hurtful are two things. Number one, Surge of Insanity and the entire mechanic around the procs that massively empower the damage of your Mind Flay when you cast Devouring Plagues. Yes, you could say that nowadays, with the meta being Archon, you were proccing so many Surge of Insanities, you had so many of these stacks backed up that you were almost overflowing with these effects, but, you know, at the end of a new expansion, you will be much slower to begin with. You won't be nearly as beefed up as you are at the end of an expansion in terms of power. Number two, at the moment, Archon is also weaker than Voidweaver. So just because it was proccing more with Archon doesn't mean it felt bad to use as Voidweaver. It was very nice. It was a very good damage boost, and also it was pretty cool finishing your, you know, your rotation of overflowing Insanity, dumping Devouring Plagues, and seeing you had 3 or better 4 stacks of Surge of Insanity ready to just dump big damage boost of empowered Mind Flays. This is now gone from your rotation. What, however, is gonna hurt much more is Void Bolt. Void Bolt is removed from your Void form. So now you no longer have the option of Dark Ascension versus Void form, and when you do enter Void form, you don't have Void Bolt. You only have Void Volley, which used to be around here with your now replaced and displaced Void Torrent. The follow-up of Void Torrent is now cooked into Void form. However, it has a much longer cooldown. You get to use it like twice in the entirety of Void form, even when you extend it with Ancient Madness to make it much longer, like a minute long, this Void form. It has lost a ton of its power because it doesn't have Void Bolt anymore. So effectively what it does is just give you 10% spell damage. That's what it does for a 2-minute cooldown. So this creates a situation where after you, let's just say you drop down your Mega Dots on everyone, you activate your Void form, you have your Void Volley. After you click this and this goes on cooldown, basically what you're left with is just waiting for this to come off, and the rest of your rotation is the same as if you had no Void form. You click this once in a while, but then essentially your spammable Void Bolt that weaved in your rotation during Void form is gone. What makes this not just a disaster, but a tragedy, is the fact that you're not just losing Void Bolt as a button, as something to click. Now you don't have anything to extend your dots. That was the thing with Void Bolt. It's the reason how Shadow Priest got to be meta for most of Dragonflight, for example, thanks to, you know, tanks pulling 20 different mobs. Priests would open up multi-dotting 4 to 5 mobs with Vampiric Touch plus Shadow Crash, wait for the cooldown, wait for the second round of Shadow Crash, and then enter Void Eruption, enter Void form. You have like 15 plus different mobs dotted, and you were able to infinitely keep up all of those dots on all of those mobs thanks to Void Bolt, extending the duration of your dots. That was the mega power of Shadow Priest, especially in Mythic Plus. Now though, you can't. Now there is no extension anymore. The only extension is the classic extension of your dots with Mind Flay, which is already a single target, obviously, and then simply refreshing your Tentacle Slam. But the thing is, Tentacle Slam only hits 6 enemies. 6. That's it. So, at the very, very most, you can pull 12 mobs and do double Tentacle Slam. Or you can do, manual tab targeting, Vampiric Touch to apply the dots, right? And then do double Tentacle Slam to hit 15 mobs total with your dots. There's a problem. Now your Tentacle Slams are on cooldown and you have no way to extend any of those dots anymore. So you are going to lose them. They are going to drop off mid-pool in a Mythic Plus, in a Mythic Plus pool, for example. So not only has it made your rotation significantly worse because you can't weave in your Void Bolts anymore when you are in Void form, not only you have gotten the rotation to be worse because you have lost Surge of Insanity. So you have your Void form, you have your Power Infusion, you have your Void Torrent, you are sort of flowing with resources, you have tons of Insanity to dump your now renamed Devouring Plague Shadow World Madness to dump all of this insanity, and then you run dry, right? Then you are all of these multipliers and buffs are dropping off, and you can still look up and notice you have 4 stacks of Surge of Insanity. So you can still weave in that damage increase in your rotation. That's also gone. So you lost that. You lost the Void Bolt in your Void form. You lost the extension of the dots inside of Void forms thanks to Void Bolt. And let's even say that the extra power you are getting from Void form, this proc of the Void Volley you get, was already cooked inside your Void Torrent right now in live. You were able to cast it every time you casted Void Torrent every 30 seconds, so it's not that you get something new from Void Volley being cooked into Void form. It just got taken away from Void Torrent and put into Void form, but you effectively gain nothing extra. So in short, it is a disaster. You have lost much of your rotational cool points. The cool point outside of Void form, which was your Surge of Insanity procs for your Mind Flay, and inside your Void form, your Void Bolts. Both of these are gone. Yes, you have the extra cool quality of life of a much better Shadow Crush now, being a Tentacle, much faster, much more guaranteed to hit the enemies, that's much better, as well as your Epic Talents are pretty good. They are pretty cool to synergize with Shadowy Apparitions because you have many ways in your talent trees to synergize and to beef up your Shadowy Apparitions. So the more they spawn, the better, because most of your talent tree will have ways to boost up the value of these Shadowy Apparitions and the capstone value of your idols with this, which is very cool. However, as for the rest of the rotation, it's bad. It's very bad. That is the current issue we have right now with Shadow Priest. Of course, don't even wonder, you haven't gained anything when it came to defensiveness, when it came to mobility. There is nothing new here. You're still as squishy, or rather as slow and immobile as you were before. Nothing has changed there. I guess the last copium for you right now as a Shadow Priest is that throughout the beta, number one, you get something valuable here, but quite a few of these capstone talents are very powerful for you to take, so it's not that you will still have to lose some of these in order to get these anyways. So it's not even about getting these talents to be revealed, but just hope for Blizzard to bring back something more dynamic in your rotation. Whether it is the now defunct Surge of Insanity, which is now a super boring, damage increase, flat damage increase, or the return of the now removed Void Bolt to just give some spice to your rotation. Otherwise it would be very boring and very flat. On top of the fact that at the moment nobody knows how this spec will even function in AoE, especially in larger pools, given that their ability to extend and maintain dots on more than 6 targets is now much more difficult. That's why we had to make the video about the sad, sorry state of Shadow, since these changes have not been particularly positive for the spec. So, for today, on this Wednesday, this was the announcement that needed to be made about the spec, now that the beta of Midnight has launched. So, with this out of the way, it is now time to leave each other for now. We're starting the goodbyes by thanking everyone for having watched the video, together with, of course, everyone else who has been supporting completely for free by liking and commenting down below, as well as subscribing to the channel itself. Now, with these things out of the way, thanks again for watching. See you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime, it's weird. It's actually kind of weird that Shadow Priest, being the one that has received the 55 different reworks in the last 3 expansions, has received the more disappointing one this time around. I thought they would have been used to it by now.